Footsteps echo in the stairwell, but no one is there. So, where are those sounds really coming from? Have you ever wondered who's watching you while you descend the stairs? Maybe the answer is something you were never meant to know. My name is Eleanor, and I need to tell you about the 3 months I worked as a night janitor at Meridian Office Tower. 3 months that taught me there are some buildings that should never have been built. Some staircases that lead to places they were never meant to go. If you've heard the stories about the architect Edmund Blackwood, the mirrors that trap souls, the elevators that collect passengers from beyond the grave, then you know that his buildings are more than just steel and concrete. They're feeding grounds for something ancient and hungry. Meridian Tower was Blackwood's masterpiece of the 1980s, and I was its final victim. It started in March 2024. I had just been laid off from my retail job, and my unemployment was running out. The cleaning company, Premier Janitorial Services, was hiring immediately for night shifts at downtown office buildings. The pay wasn't great, $14 an hour, but it was steady work, and I needed steady work. The woman who interviewed me, Mrs. Rodriguez, seemed nervous when she mentioned Meridian Tower specifically. It's a 43-story office building, she explained, shuffling papers on her desk without making eye contact. Built in 1981, financial firms, law offices, consulting companies. Very professional environment. She paused, as if choosing her words carefully. The position requires you to clean floors 1 through 43, using the stairwell system exclusively. The elevators are under maintenance indefinitely. You'll start at the bottom and work your way up, floor by floor. It should take you about 6 hours to complete the entire building. Every floor? I asked. That's a lot of stairs. Yes. Well, she cleared her throat. The previous employee mentioned that it's actually easier than you'd think. Something about the way the building is designed. You'll find your rhythm. What she didn't tell me, what no one told me, was why Premier Janitorial had gone through 12 night janitors at Meridian Tower. In the past 18 months, Meridian Tower dominated the downtown skyline, a sleek glass and steel monument to 1980s ambition. During the day, it bustled with activity, suited professionals hurrying through the marble lobby, elevators constantly moving between floors, the steady hum of commerce and conversation. But at night, it became something else entirely. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 6 a.m. I would enter through the service door in the basement, collect my cleaning supplies from the janitor's closet, and begin the long climb to the 43rd floor. The stairwell was utilitarian and stark. Concrete walls painted institutional beige, fluorescent lights that hummed constantly, metal handrails worn smooth by decades of use. Each landing was identical, a fire door leading to the office floor, a number stenciled on the wall, and the continuation of stairs going up and down. But from the very first night, I noticed something odd about the numbering system. The basement was labeled B. Ground floor was 1, second floor was 2, and so on up to 12. But then the next floor was labeled 14. There was no 13th floor. This wasn't unusual in itself, Many buildings skip the 13th floor due to superstition. But what was strange was that there was no gap in the staircase, no extra landing, no blocked doorway, no indication that a floor had been omitted. The stairs simply continued from the 12th floor, landing directly to what was labeled as the 14th floor, with exactly the same number of steps as between any other floors. I mentioned this to the day security guard, Mr. Park, when I finished my first shift. "Oh yeah, the missing 13th floor," he chuckled. "Yeah, lots of buildings do that. Bad luck or something. But there's no space for it," I said. "The staircase doesn't skip any steps. It's like the floor never existed at all." Mr. Park's smile faded slightly. "Yeah, well, architects do weird things sometimes. I wouldn't think too much about it, but I did think about it. Because as the nights went on, I started to realize that something was very wrong with the distance between the 12th and 14th floors. My routine was simple. Start in the basement, clean my way up to the 43rd floor, then take the stairs back down. On average, it took me about 8 minutes to clean each floor, vacuum the carpets, empty the trash, wipe down surfaces, clean the bathrooms. The walking time between floors was roughly 2 minutes, including the actual cleaning. But the walk from the 12th floor to the 14th floor consistently took longer. Not dramatically longer, maybe an extra minute or two, but enough to be noticeable. When you're doing the same route every night, I started timing myself with a stopwatch. Ground floor to second floor, 2 minutes, 15 seconds. 5th floor to 6th floor, 2 minutes, 10 seconds. 11th floor to 12th floor, 2 minutes, 20 seconds. 12th floor to 14th floor, 4 minutes, 35 seconds, nearly twice as long, with the same number of steps. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe the steps between those floors were slightly taller. Maybe I was getting tired by that point in the night and moving more slowly. Maybe the fluorescent lights in that section of stairwell were dimmer, making me more cautious. But none of those explanations felt right. The real weirdness started during my second week. I was cleaning the 35th floor when I heard footsteps in the stairwell. Clear, distinct footsteps, echoing off the concrete walls. Someone was walking down the stairs above me. This was unusual, but not alarming. Occasionally, employees worked late or came in early. Security guards did periodic rounds. I continued with my work, expecting whoever it was to either exit on one of the floors or pass by me in the stairwell. But the footsteps stopped. They had been getting closer, clearly descending, but then they just stopped. I waited for several minutes, listening carefully, but heard nothing else. When I finished cleaning the 35th floor and moved to the stairwell, it was empty. No one on the stairs, no recently opened fire doors, no indication that anyone had been there at all. This happened again 3 nights later. I was on the 8th floor when I heard footsteps in the stairwell. This time, someone walking up from below. Again, the footsteps stopped before reaching my floor. And when I checked the stairwell, it was empty. I mentioned this to Mrs. Rodriguez during my first weekly check-in. "Oh, that's probably just the security guards," she said quickly. They do rounds at different times. Sometimes they use the stairwells. But I never see them, I said. And Mr. Park works during the day. Who's doing security at night? Mrs. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable. Well, there might be automated systems, motion sensors, that kind of thing. Sometimes they can create sounds that seem like footsteps. It was a weak explanation, and we both knew it. The footsteps continued throughout my 3rd week, but they developed a pattern, always between floors 12 and 14, always stopping before I could see who was making them, and always in the area where the 13th floor should have been. I started to dread that part of my route. The section of stairwell between the 12th and 14th floors felt different from the rest of the building, colder despite the building's heating system, darker even though the fluorescent lights were identical to those on other floors, and there was a smell, faint but persistent, like old paper and dust. And something else I couldn't identify, during my 4th week. I decided to investigate more systematically. I brought a small notebook and started documenting everything unusual about the missing 13th floor section. I counted steps, measured time intervals, noted temperature differences, recorded any sounds or disturbances. What I found disturbed me deeply. The stairwell between floors 12 and 14 had exactly 20 for steps going up, the same as between any other floors. But the ceiling height was different. While most floors in the building had 12-foot ceilings, the space between floors 12 and 14 was nearly 20 feet high. There was room for another floor. There was definitely room for a 13th floor, but there was no floor there. Just an extended stairwell with no landing, no door, no access point. It was as if the 13th floor had been removed, but the empty space remained. I also discovered markings on the walls that I hadn't noticed before. Scratches in the concrete, about waist high, that looked almost like tallies. Someone had been keeping count of something, and near what would have been the 13th floor landing, there were darker stains on the concrete that looked suspiciously like old blood stains. But most disturbing were the names, carved into the concrete walls, barely visible in the fluorescent light, were dozens of names. First names, last names, initials. Some looked recent, carved with sharp tools. Others were old and worn, barely legible. Jennifer Walsh, Michael Santos, David Kim, Amanda Foster, Thomas Chen. I recognized one of the names, Michael Santos. He had been mentioned in a newspaper article I found online about Meridian Tower in 1987. 6 years after the building opened, Michael Santos, a 34-year-old accountant who worked on the 23rd floor, disappeared. He was last seen leaving his office after working late, but he never made it to his car in the parking garage. Security cameras showed him entering the stairwell, but he was never seen again. The official investigation concluded that he had probably left the building through a different exit and met with foul play somewhere else in the city. His body was never found, but his name was carved in the concrete wall of the non-existent 13th floor. I started researching the other names I had found. Most of them corresponded to missing persons cases spanning for decades. Employees of companies in Meridian Tower who had vanished without explanation. People who had entered the building and never came out. Jennifer Walsh, 1983. Amanda Foster, 1991. David Kim, 2003. Thomas Chen, 2015. All last seen in Meridian Tower. All disappeared without a trace, and all of their names were carved in the walls of the space where the 13th floor should have been. I tried to research the building's construction history and found references to Edmund Blackwood, the architect who had designed several buildings in the city, the same Blackwood whose other projects had been associated with unexplained phenomena, mirrors that trapped souls, elevators that collected the dead, according to the records I could find. Blackwood had originally designed Meridian Tower with a 13th floor. The blueprints from 1979 showed a standard office layout for floor 13, identical to the other floors in the building. But construction photographs from 1981 showed that the 13th floor was never built. The construction crew simply skipped from the 12th floor to what they labeled as the 14th floor, leaving a large empty space in between. When asked about this in a 1981 interview with Architectural Digest, Blackwood had been cryptic. Some spaces are better left empty. Not every floor is meant to house the living. I was becoming obsessed with understanding what had happened to the 13th floor and the people whose names were carved in its walls. But I was also becoming increasingly frightened of that section of stairwell. The footsteps I heard were getting closer. Instead of stopping before they reached me, they now seemed to follow me as I climbed between floors 12 and 14. I would hear them behind me, matching my pace, but when I turned around, the stairwell was always empty. The smell was getting stronger, too. That mixture of old paper and dust, but now with additional notes, mold, dampness, and something organic that made my stomach turn. And the temperature drops were becoming more extreme. While the rest of the building maintained a comfortable 72 degrees, the section between floors 12 and 14 often felt like it was in the low 50s. But most disturbing were the voices. It started as just a whisper, barely audible above the hum of the fluorescent lights. I would be cleaning the 12th floor, and I would hear what sounded like someone talking softly in the stairwell. When I went to investigate, the voices would stop. Gradually, the voices became clearer and more frequent. I began to make out words, fragments of sentences, entire conversations. Been walking for hours. Can't find the door. Supposed to be on this floor. Going in circles. The voices sounded confused, frustrated, lost. They seemed to come from the empty space where the 13th floor should have been. One night, during my 6th week, I heard a voice I recognized. I was cleaning the men's bathroom on the 14th floor when I heard someone in the stairwell calling for help. The voice was clear and distinct, speaking English with a slight Korean accent. "Hello? Is anyone there? I'm lost. I can't find the exit." I knew that voice. It was Mr. Park, the day security guard. I rushed to the stairwell and called out, "Mr. Park, are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm here," the voice replied, seeming to come from somewhere below me. "I'm on the 13th floor, but I can't find the door. All the doors are locked. I looked down the stairwell. There was number 13th floor. There was no landing between floors 12 and 14. No door. No place for anyone to be standing. Mr. Park, there is no 13th floor. I called out. Can you see the floor numbers? What floor are you actually on? I'm on 13, the voice insisted, sounding more distressed. The sign on the wall says 13, but none of the doors will open and the staircase. The staircase doesn't seem to go anywhere. I've been walking up and down for hours. I ran down to the 12th floor, then up to the 14th floor, calling Mr. Park's name. But the stairwell was empty. There was no one there. The next morning, I called Premier Janitorial and asked to speak with Mrs. Rodriguez immediately. I need to know about Mr. Park, I said. The day security guard at Meridian Tower. Something's wrong. There was a long silence on the phone. Eleanor, Mrs. Rodriguez said finally, there is no Mr. Park. There hasn't been a day security guard at Meridian Tower for over 6 months. The building management company handles security remotely through cameras and electronic systems. I felt my blood turn to ice, but I talk to him every morning when my shift ends. I said, Korean man, about 50 years old, very friendly. He always asks how my night went. Eleanor, I think you need to come in and talk to me in person. Can you come to the office this afternoon? I spent the day researching online, looking for any information about security guards at Meridian Tower. What I found made me sick to my stomach. James Park, age 52, had worked as a security guard at Meridian Tower from 2018 to 2023. In November 2023, he had been found dead in the stairwell between floors 12 and 14. The official cause of death was a heart attack, but the circumstances were strange. His body was discovered on a Tuesday morning, but he had been scheduled to work the previous Friday. Security cameras showed him entering the stairwell on Friday evening, but there was no record of him leaving the building. He had apparently been trapped in the stairwell for 4 days before his death. The person I had been talking to every morning for 6 weeks was already dead. That afternoon, I went to Premier Janitorial and told Mrs. Rodriguez everything. The footsteps, the voices, the missing 13th floor, the names carved in the walls, and my conversations with the dead security guard. She listened to everything without interruption, her face growing pale as I spoke. Eleanor, she said when I finished, you're the 13th person to work night janitorial at Meridian Tower in the past 18 months. All of the others quit within their first 2 months, citing similar experiences. Footsteps, voices, unexplained phenomena in the stairwell. What happened to them after they quit? Most of them found other jobs and moved on with their lives. But 3 of them, she pulled out a folder from her desk. 3 of them disappeared after quitting. They left town suddenly, without telling anyone where they were going. Their families never heard from them again. She showed me photographs and missing persons reports. Lisa Chen, 2023. Marcus Rodriguez, 2023. Jennifer Walsh, 22. I recognized Jennifer Walsh's name. It was one of the names carved in the wall of the non-existent 13th floor, Mrs. Rodriguez, I said, I think the building is collecting people. I think everyone who gets lost in that stairwell becomes trapped there, and their names get added to the walls. I think that's what happened to James Park and Michael Santos and all the others. Mrs. Rodriguez closed the folder and looked at me with tired, frightened eyes. Eleanor, I'm going to give you 2 weeks' pay in advance. And I want you to promise me you'll never go back to Meridian Tower. Find another job in a different part of the city and try to forget about what you experienced there. But what about the other people who are trapped? What about the building itself? There's nothing we can do, she said. Premier Janitorial has tried to break the contract with Meridian Tower multiple times, but the building management company threatens legal action. They insist the building needs to be maintained, and they keep hiring new cleaning companies when the old ones quit. So you just keep sending people there, knowing what happens. We warn them as much as we can without sounding crazy. We hope they'll be smart enough to quit before they become part of the building. I took the money and promised I wouldn't return to Meridian Tower. But I lied. That night, I went back. I couldn't leave knowing that there were people trapped in that impossible space between floors, calling for help, carving their names in concrete walls as they slowly realized they would never escape. I brought a crowbar, a flashlight, rope, and a hammer. I was going to break through the wall where the 13th floor should be and find a way to help the people trapped inside. The building felt different at night when I wasn't there as an employee, more hostile, more aware of my presence. The stairwell lights seemed dimmer, the air colder, the shadows deeper. When I reached the space between floors 12 and 14, I could immediately hear the voices, dozens of them, all talking at once, all sounding confused and desperate. Been here for days, can't find the way out, keep going in circles, someone help us. I called out, I'm here to help. Can you hear me? The voices stopped immediately, as if they had all heard me at once. Then, one voice, James Park's voice, spoke clearly. Eleanor? Eleanor, is that you? Thank God. We've been waiting for you. Mr. Park. Where are you? I can hear you, but I can't see you. We're here, in the 13th floor, but we can't get out. The doors are locked, and the staircase. It doesn't connect to anything. It just goes around and around. I examined the wall carefully with my flashlight. The concrete looked solid, but when I tapped on it with the hammer, it sounded hollow in certain places. I'm going to try to break through the wall. I called out. No. Multiple voices shouted at once. Don't do that. James Park's voice was urgent. Eleanor, listen to me carefully. This isn't a normal space. This is something Blackwood created, a trap for people who get lost in buildings. If you break through the wall, you'll get pulled into. You need to leave, now, while you still can. I can't leave you all trapped there, Eleanor. Look at the names on the walls. Look at them carefully. I shone my flashlight on the carved names. Jennifer Walsh, Michael Santos, David Kim, Amanda Foster, Thomas Chen, Lisa Chen, Marcus Rodriguez. And at the bottom of the list, carved in fresh letters, Eleanor Martinez. My name was already on the wall. Eleanor, James Park's voice was fading, becoming more distant. "Run. Get out of the building. Don't use the elevators. Don't use the stairwells. Find another way out. And whatever you do, don't let anyone else come here." I dropped the crowbar and ran. Not up to the 14th floor, not down to the 12th floor, but toward the emergency exit sign I had never noticed before. It led to a fire escape that took me directly outside, bypassing the rest of the building entirely. I didn't stop running until I was 6 blocks away. The next morning, I called Premier Janitorial and quit over the phone. I also called the building management company and told them about the safety hazards in the stairwell, the missing persons cases, and the architectural problems with the 13th floor. They told me they had no record of any safety issues and suggested I seek professional help for my stress-related hallucinations. I moved out of the city 2 weeks later. I found a job in a small town where the tallest building has 4 stories and everyone uses elevators that were installed in the 1990s. But Edmund Blackwood's influence follows you. I still have dreams about the stairwell at Meridian Tower. In these dreams, I'm climbing between floors 12 and 14, but the staircase never ends. I climb for hours, days, years, and I never reach either floor. I can hear other people climbing around me, but when I call out to them, they don't respond. And sometimes, when I'm in any stairwell in any building, I hear footsteps that don't belong to me. I hear voices calling for help from floors that don't exist. I've started researching other buildings designed by Edmund Blackwood and his associates. Apartment buildings with mirrors that trap souls. Office towers with elevators that collect the dead. Shopping centers with escalators that lead to nowhere. There are dozens of them, scattered across the country, all built with the same purpose: to feed on human souls, to collect the lost and desperate, to create spaces where people can disappear without a trace. Meridian Tower is still operating. Premier Janitorial is still sending night janitors to clean the building, and they're still quitting within weeks of starting. The building management company keeps insisting that everything is normal, and city officials refuse to investigate. But if you search online for missing persons reports in our city, you'll find a pattern. People disappearing from downtown office buildings. People last seen entering stairwells and never coming out. And if you're ever walking past Meridian Tower at night, look up at the windows. Count the floors. You'll notice that there are lights on the 13th floor. Even though the 13th floor doesn't exist, you'll see silhouettes moving behind the windows. People walking back and forth, searching for exits that aren't there. Those are the people who got lost between floors 12 and 14. They're still there, still trapped, still looking for a way out. And if you listen carefully, you might hear them calling for help. But don't try to help them. Don't enter the building. Don't use the stairwells. Because once you get lost in Edmund Blackwood's architecture, the only way out is to become part of the building forever. My name is Eleanor Martinez, and this is my warning. The 13th floor doesn't exist, but the people trapped there do, and they're waiting for someone foolish enough to join them.